Now, earning per share. Earning per share is one of the most commonly used corporate profitability measure or profitability or performance measure for publicly traded securities. So for publicly traded firms, the EPS playing a major important role. Based on the EPS, we can able to say that the company's earning is more. So basically, you are investing $100 on a particular share. How much earning the company is generating with your amount, that will be decided.
I'm not seeing your screen.
So basic earning per share is given here. We company is having the two types of capital structures. One is a simple capital structure. Simple capital structure is very easy. There is no potential dilute securities such as non-convertible debt, non-convertible debt, non-convertible preferred stock would be there. Means if the convertible securities or convertible debt would be there, then automatically dilutes, reduce the earning per share. So basic EPS is there is no such complex capital structure. If we have a complex capital structure, that would be a diluted EPS. So we have a basic formula here: net income minus preferred dividend. So net income means already debt would be there in the company, but that interest would be deducted, and the net income available for equity shareholders and preferred stockholders would be there here, divided by number of shares outstanding. So here whatever the preferred stock dividend is there will be deducted, and only the net income available for equity shareholders divided by weighted average number of common stockholders, you will get basic EPS. Then diluted EPS will be available only when we have a complex capital structure. If we have a capital complex structure, the formula for diluted EPS would be changes. That is, when a company has a potentially diluted securities, it must report diluted EPS also. For any convertible preferred stock, convertible debt, warrants, stock options that are dilute the calculation of diluted EPS, then they are going to dilute it, means they are going to reduce it. And first you have to understand what is the preferred stock. Preferred stock, you know sir, preferred stock is, it is having some privileges, advantages than the common stockholders, whereas the common stockholders do not have them. Preferred stockholders are having two types of characteristics, advantages. One is they will get first advantage to get incomes or dividends whenever the after payments of the debt, interest and everything, automatically these dividends available to whom? The net income is available to whom? Only two people, that is common stockholders and preferred stockholders. First we are going to pay the dividends to preferred stockholders, then that is the first preference they are getting, that is the reason preferred is coming. And second thing is, whenever the company is going to wind up, all the assets minus liabilities will be done. All after payment of all the assets, after payment of all the liabilities, we have net worth available for the equity shareholders and preferred shareholders. First this net worth will be paid to the amount dues to the preferred stockholders, the second preference they are getting. Okay, two items, second almost preference they are getting, and remaining whatever available to there will be paid to the common stockholders. And here also after payment of dividend for the preferred stockholders, remaining amount will be paid to the common stockholders. So that is the reason common stockholders are not getting much priority than the preferred stockholders. They are having the two preferred options to them. And convertible debt means those debts are liabilities for the company, those can be converted into equity stock. Okay, in future this debt holders become equity holders, real owners of the company. That possibility is there at the time of issuing the debt also. We mentioned that those debt may be converted in future into the equity shares or common stock. Warrants and stock options also same like that. Basically stock options means the company purchased some options and futures whenever it is trading, and those values will also be deducted, and then those will also be deducted, and then only we can say that net income available to equity shareholders. When you have all these things, then the diluted EPS formula is going to be changed: net income minus preferred dividend, okay, plus convertible preferred dividend plus convertible debt interest into 1 minus t. It's a tax, because tax you are taking here, because this is tax deductible, this you should pay tax, and this amount also you are going to pay tax. That is the reason the 1 minus t is coming. Only the unpaid tax will be taken. For example, tax rate is 40%, only 60% of debt interest and 60% of dividend would be taken, divided by weighted average shares. You know this, up to this point you know, that is the basic EPS. And next is shares from conversion. If you are converting the number of shares to preferred stock, if you are converting these preferred stocks to equity shares, how many shares you are going to be added? For example, you are going to be add 100 shares, those 100 figure coming here. And the same debt also same, if you are taking the debt values, the same debt how many number of shares you are going to convert, then those things will come. If you have a stock options also, all the stock options going to be shares issuable from stock options. How many shares you are going to issue for the stock options will be taken here, number, how many shares, 100 shares, 100 shares, 100 shares will be added to the outstanding common stock holders. A company has a securities which are convertible to ordinary shares. It is said to be a complex capital structure. You know that. Okay, a dilute security is one that it converts to its common stock to equivalent would be decrease the EPS. A dilute securities, you know, preferred stocks are there, dividend debt is there, they are going to be converted. So these all convertible securities are dilute securities are called in case of EPS, calculation of EPS. These dilute securities one that if converted into common stock, automatically the EPS would be reduces. As you know that EPS, basic EPS is higher and diluted EPS would be lower, or maybe sometimes equal also. At this is at the point of anti-dilute situation. I'll give you example for that also. An anti-dilute security is that would not reduce the EPS if converted into common stock. So please basic you understand here, a diluted securities are same, or anti-dilute securities are also same. Those are also same preferred stock. But here if you convert into securities, it reduces the EPS, then you are calling it as a dilute securities. Even you are converting into common stock, the same preferred stock, if you are converting into common stock, if sometimes it does not reduce the basic EPS, and it is called as a anti-dilute securities. Hope you understand. Now I am going to the classic example for better understanding of the anti-dilute and dilute securities. Okay, this is the example. In 2018, ABC Limited had net income of and average common stock are 600,000 and net income is 1800,000 and 20,000 convertible preferred shares are there. Each paying 10 dividend and convertible to 3 shares of common stock were also outstanding. Compute basic and dilute EPS. Okay, sir, for calculation of basic EPS, what is the formula? Net income minus preferred dividend divided by outstanding common stock. This is the formula. What is the net income here? Net income is 1800,000 minus preferred stock is 20,000 shares are there. Each share dividend is $10. So that is 200,000. Okay, divided by 600 common stock shares are outstanding given in the question. Then the answer would be 2.67 is the basic EPS. Okay, this is the formula for basic EPS. And for diluted EPS, for calculation of diluted EPS, we have a formula like this: net income, okay, then preferred dividend is not going to be deducted, entire net income will be taken. divided by common stocks outstanding plus new issue. So how many convertible preferred stock is there? 20,000 convertible preferred stock. Each preferred stock is getting 3 shares of common stock into 3 is equal to 60,000. Okay, then this is preferred stock conversion. So automatically 1800,000 divided by 660, so new shares are coming, then the diluted EPS would be 2.72. Sir, actually we know that when you are converting this equity, when you are converting this preferred stock to common stock, the basic EPS should be reduces, but here it's not make sense, the basic EPS is increasing. Okay, so it is not make sense to make larger than the basic EPS, so almost it should be equal or less than, so diluted EPS would be also same 2.67. so the basic thing is diluted EPS reflects maximum potential dilution, so but it is not happening here, then we can call it as a anti-diluted securities. Okay, I told you I will tell you later about the comprehensive income. This is the comprehensive income topic. Other comprehensive incomes. Okay. Unrealized gains or losses from certain categories of investment securities. Okay, so comprehensive income consisting of certain items such as unrealized gains or losses from certain categories of investment securities. So categories of investment securities are available for sale. Those securities are available for sale, readily available for sale. Okay, then if you are getting any sort of unrealized gain or unrealized loss, but you are closing your financial statements now this particular point, then that should be shown under comprehensive income, not in the not under the revenues or incomes. It will be shown under comprehensive income statement. Okay, and for example foreign currency translation adjustment. Sir, always we are, when you are doing a business with other countries, there is a need to a certain exchange rate. Okay, from India to USA some exports or imports are happening, there is a dollar changes. For example, at the time of entering the contract is 69.45 is a dollar rate for INR. So at the time of payment, sir, this becomes 69.35. A 10 cents gain will be there. This 10-cent gain is unrealized gain. This is not because of any sort of operation or anything, it will be happened, so it is other comprehensive income gain. For other cases, sometimes at the time of payment it becomes 69.55, thus 10 cents is a loss. It is also definitely a other comprehensive income, not a direct income. And derivative contracts used for hedging. For example, you are a manufacturing company, you are using oil too much, daily 200 barrels or 300 barrels you are using. So when the barrel rate increases a $1, there is a loss of $200 for you daily. So that is the reason you are expecting the oil prices may be going up, inflationary you are expecting. Now trading at 59, you are expecting that maybe go to 62 in the month of April or May. Then whatever you are doing is you are purchasing a hedging contracts. Okay, when you are purchasing a contract, if the price is going up also, you are gaining some $3 or $2 here gain. That gain is a unrealized gain till now. Okay, that derivative contract you are using for hedging or some other security purpose. So that income generated through these items also considered as a comprehensive income, not a regular income. And certain costs of the company's defined benefits post retirement plans. So the company's post retirement plans, everything, those type of costs are also comes under comprehensive income. Okay, and comprehensive income is equal to net income plus other comprehensive income. If you add the incomes or losses to this, then you will get a comprehensive income. Okay, final comprehensive income after calculation of net income through the income statement, all these things, if it's a gain, that should be added, if it is a loss, that should be deducted. Hope you understand, sir. Now the most important, we entered into understanding the balance sheet. According to IFRS, it is called as a financial position. According to the US GAAP, it is called as a balance sheet. You know that assets are resources controlled as a result of past transactions that are expected to provide future economic benefit to the company. So these are the resources you are using. If you are using them perfectly, they are going to generate future economic benefits to you. And liabilities are obligations as a result of past events. In the past you took some loan for purchasing of equipment or something. So please understand, liabilities are obligations as a result of past events that are expected to require an outflow of economic resource. Okay, so in between the difference is the equity. Okay, owner's residual interest in the assets after deducting the liability. Okay, the future economic benefits, future economic losses, are in between, that is your equity. And these all the balance sheet items should be recognized properly, and different item of assets and liabilities may be measured differently. The balance sheet can be used to assess firm's liquidity, solvency and ability to pay dividends to the shareholders. So balance sheet is the tool for the financial analyst. He can analyze the liquidity of the firm. So if he can see more assets are there, more current assets are there than the more current liabilities, then he can say that the company is capable of paying all its current liabilities. If right, then we can say that it is very highly liquidated. And solvency position, the company is having good debt and sound equity, and more equity is also there. The company can able to pay off its debts, and debt equity, asset equity ratios they can apply. And the company ability to pay dividends to the shareholders. So if you are investing in a company for the purpose of dividends and future economic benefits, right, as an investor, so as an analyst you have to check whether it is able to pay the dividend to shareholders or not. Yes, a performance, financial performance is good, then it can be able to pay dividends well. So that is the reason you are calculating EPS. What is the earning per share? Earning per share is $1. So basically you are expecting that at least 60 cents would be paid as a dividend this year, like that. Okay, balance sheet, assets and liabilities and equity should not be interpreted as a market value or intrinsic value. Okay, should not be interpreted as market value or intrinsic value, because you know some market values are different and the values which are presented in the book values are always different. Okay, for the most firms the balance sheet consisting of mixture of these values. Okay, those are historical cost, amortized cost, fair value. Sir, net realizable value comes for inventories, like that. Fair value is not a market value, but it's really near to the market value. And amortized cost means simply depreciable cost. You purchased a machine at $100 and you are depreciating a long time, now it is showing the $40, but you can sell in the market, that gives you more or less. Okay, and historical value is just basic simple. You purchased a land for 10 million, the same 10 million will be available in your business. There is no appreciation is possible, even the market price of the land increases. Okay, and it is most important to understand what is the future cash flow capacity of the company. That will be decided from the cash flow analysis, but important element of the company's ability to generate the future cash flows are not shown in the balance sheet, because it's a balance sheet is a historical value and current value, current situation. You are not going to show that the future, you are not going to show some sort of information which is related to qualitative in the balance sheet. So only quantitative data you are mentioning, and but you can but it can sure that if you apply some tools and techniques, then you can estimate some sort of ability. But companies future cash flows are not expected because it will become uncertain. Based on the balance sheet, you cannot say that the company is going to earn this much of profit, that much of profit, and these are the incomes going to be happen in the future. That should not be possible actually. Basically, we have a classified balance sheet and liquid based balance sheet, liquidity based balance sheet. A classified balance sheets, now we are you can see in the balance sheet of any company, that is a classified balance sheet, because you know they are separately reporting the current, non-current assets, current liabilities, non-current liabilities, like that they are showing. It is a separately showing the classified current to non-current, current liabilities to non-current liabilities, fixed assets, like that they are showing. It's a classified. And some of the methods of showing the balance sheet, some other method is liquidity based presentation. So basically often banks are using bank industry is using these type of balance sheets. Okay, they present assets and liabilities in order of liquidity, so most liquidity assets they will show first, and less liquidity assets they will show later. So number 1, number 2, number 3, most liquid assets, later number 1, number 2, number 3, these are the less liquidity assets, they will show like this. These are the less liquidity, and these are the highly liquidable assets. Okay, this is the two methods. Normally we are going to analyze our analysis part on this if it is not a banking industry. Very simple definitions I am going to discuss with you here. Current assets, non-current assets, current liabilities, non-current liabilities. The terminology is very simple. Expect only 2 to 3 terms here. Current assets are those expected to be used upon converted into cash. So current assets are assets which can be converted into cash in less than one accounting year or firm's operating cycle, whichever is greater. So basically within one accounting year, if you are going to convert anything, that will be considered as a current assets. A current liability is also same. Current liabilities are those the firm expects to satisfy, expect to pay off within one accounting year, or say whichever operating cycle, or say whichever is less. So basically current in nature, you can able to convert into cash, you can able to pay in 1 year. Okay, you can able to convert into cash within 1 year. So this is current assets and current liabilities. When come to non-current assets, it's a very simple, sir. The time factor is changing. It is also asset, this is also asset. Current assets are also assets, non-current assets also assets. But the thing is, those expected to used upon conversion, the conversion time takes more than one accounting year or more than one operating cycle, whichever is greater. So here less, here more. The same, if you are paying within 1 year, it is a easily convertible, that is current assets. If you are converting that, if you are taking more time, converting more than one accounting year, that is non-current liability. For example, here debt instruments, bonds, you are issuing these bonds for 5 years, you will pay off in 5 years, long term liability. Okay, for example, here inventory for current assets, inventory you can convert into cash within one accounting cycle. If you are selling the goods, means immediately it is converting into cash, right? Hope you understand. This current liabilities are accounts payable, you can pay off within 6 months. Okay, or interest, within 1 year you are going to pay this current year interest. The classic examples of the current assets are cash and cash equivalents. Okay, those are short term, highly liquid financial assets. You can convert into cash immediately, rapidly you can convert into cash. Okay, their balance sheet values are generally close to identical and using their amortized cost or fair value. See sir, you have a securities, then if you observe these securities, those are close to market value, then you can able to sell in the market and very close to the fair value. Okay, and for example, you have inventory, if you sell this inventory in the market tomorrow or day after tomorrow, you will get same value, that is the fair value or net realizable value. So very near to the market value or amortized values. and easily rapidly convert into cash. And next, short term investment, this close to maturity. So these short term maturities, for example, you have a investments which will be matured within 1 year, for example. So this is easily convertible into cash because the maturity is very near, and you know the risk is also very low because 1 year is the 1 year period is there. The risk is also very low, and if something happen, if the interest rate increased little bit, if the interest rates are increased, what will happen? The value is also increases. So significantly changes, the value significantly changes. Short term investment that are closer to the maturity, the risk is minimal, that their value will change significantly with the change in the interest rates, because you are invested, the value of the interest rate increases, the market value of the bond is going up, and you are going to get higher interest in coming year. So short term investments, these are also comes under current assets because these are close to maturity within one accounting year. Next, marketable securities, you can market it, you can sell it immediately. Marketable securities also financial assets and include publicly traded debt or publicly traded instruments or securities. You purchase some sort of securities, you can sell immediately. So these are also comes under current assets. Hope you understand. Trade receivables, you are already sold on credit basis to so many peoples, those are signed on the document, they will pay after 6 months. So within 6 months this amount should be collected. So these trade receivables or account receivables are also current assets. These are reported at net realizable value, by the estimated bad debts will be deducted. Okay, net realizable account receivables, you are estimating that 5% would be loss and remaining would be shown under current assets as a balance sheet item, and this 5% is the income statement item as loss. We already discussed this. And inventories are reported at cost price or market price, whichever is less. And you, for example, you purchase this inventory at $9 and the market price is now you can able to sell in $15, but you have to show this cost price only, because already I told you conservatism. According to the conservatism, you should expect future losses but not incomes, future profits. You cannot expect the future profits. So according to this concept, the inventories are valued at cost price or net realizable value, whichever is less. For example, if the market value is less, $8, no, you have to come $8 only. You have to value your inventories $8 because whichever is less. And the most important topic here, people confused here, prepaid expenses. Sir, you are saying expenses should go to income statement, na? But why you are recording here in balance sheet? Sir, it is prepaid expenses. So you are prepaid means paid in advance. When you are paying in advance, your money is others' hand, right? Whenever you ask, they have to pay back, first thing. Second thing is, this expense is not related to the current year, right? Only current year income should be taken, current year's expenses and income should be taken in the income statement. So income statement is avoiding this. But already you paid, where you have to show, you if you don't pay, this amount is in the cash, right? So that is the reason, instead of showing in cash, you are showing under current assets only prepaid expenses. You paid in advance, but that economic benefit will be used in the next coming year. So next coming year, till next coming year, the income statement is not accepting to take that amount. So you are keeping in the balance sheet as a current asset item, and the next month, next year you will take into income statement and you will remove in the balance sheet. So the basic idea is, general idea is, if you don't pay these expenses, this cash is in cash box only, cash item only. But if you add this item to the cash, but the balance is showing different, cash balance, original balance, and this cash balance is showing differently, book balance. That is the reason This cash is should be under current assets, right? Under current assets only you are taking a column as prepaid, a row as prepaid expenses. Okay, hope you understand this different type of assets. And now come to the current liabilities. Current liabilities are accounts payable, because you already purchased on credit basis, you are liable to pay off them. So this is your liability, your duty and obligation to pay the debts. And notes payable, you already issued the notes. Please understand here, notes payable means you already purchased goods and services. Instead of instead of that, you written a note to them, I will pay after some time. That type of note it is. Okay, not bonds payable, it's a notes payable. And income tax payable, the income tax is charged by the government at a percentage, but you didn't pay some amount. That certain amount is a liability for you. It is a current liability, you have to pay as soon as possible when date comes. So that is the income tax payable. And when come to accrued expenses, so accrued expenses is liability, because you know the people are working in your company, they need to take salaries. For the month of for the month of December, you didn't pay the salaries due around $2,000. Okay, for the month of December salaries, but you are closing your accounts 31st December. Till 31st December you didn't pay this amount to them, but you already accrued the services of them. So this become the current liability in the next coming year. This become the current liability in the next coming year, you are going to pay. So till 31st December you consumed the services, you accrued the services of the customers, employees, but you are not yet paid. That is the reason you are liable to pay off. So that is your liability. And deferred income. Deferred income means here it is a unearned revenue. It is also called as unearned revenue. Revenues are received in advance, amount is received. So one of the customer paid you advance for next year services. So what is happening? You are not yet provided the services, means it is not your income for this year. You received the amount, but you are not yet earned. Unearned revenues. Just now I told you, I received from $600 from you people, but I didn't served entire $600. So all the $500 whatever I received in advance, it is unearned revenue for me. So I am not taking in the income statement as received, but I am showing in the balance sheet as a liability. Whenever I served you, that become earned revenue, then I will record in my income statement. Till that point of time, till completion of this 600 hours, then that would be only unearned revenue as a liability. Okay, because that is not my money. Whenever I earn, that will become my money. Next I am going. And when come to non-current assets, basically non-current assets are fixed assets. Generally we call non-current assets are fixed, and this non-current assets are fixed or depreciable assets. We can call it as depreciable assets also. For example, property, plant, equipment can be reported using cost model. You know the cost model, at a cost price, at the what price you acquire them, that acquisition cost should be taken. And sometimes you are allowed to revaluate under IFRS. So you are allowed to revaluate it, that revaluation cost will be taken. Sir, revaluation is not appreciation, please understand. So the revaluation methods and techniques would be there. If we have in our concept, we will definitely discuss it. Under revaluation, you are not appreciating a value, but you are revaluating that particular asset. So assets, non-current assets are in our balance sheet, shows the book values are cost model values, acquisition costs after deducting the depreciation, or revaluation cost minus after accumulated depreciation for all the years. Next, under US GAAP, only cost model is allowed. There is no revaluation is there. Cost model is historical cost less accumulated depreciation for all the years, also called as a amortized cost. Okay, you know that land is a natural resource and infinite life, it is not possible to depreciate. We have intangible assets created internally. So for example, you are creating you are doing some research and development, and you created a internal intangible assets. So whatever you are created for this, whatever you charged, whatever you spent, that is expensed as incurred, shown income statement, definitely directly. Intangible assets created internally are expensed as incurred. So whatever the expenses incurred for this, directly goes to income statement. Okay, and intangible assets purchased, so you are purchasing intangible assets from outside, whatever the cost paid, the cost model is applicable. Under IFRS, research and development costs are expensed as incurred. Okay, and research costs are expensed and development costs are capitalized. So please understand, whatever the incurring the expenses for the research is expensed, and for the development of that particular asset is capitalized. Okay, both the research and development costs are expensed under US GAAP, because those are internally done, right? We already know that the first one, internal. Okay, internally developed and research, those costs should be under US GAAP, those should be expensed, means directly income statement. And when come to the goodwill, so goodwill is, for example, very simple concept. I'll tell you, you are buying a company, you are purchasing or you are acquiring a company B. This company B is having a different type of assets and liabilities. Assets minus liabilities, it become, for example, $100. The worth of the company is, net worth of the company is $100. Now you are purchasing this company by paying $120. The worth is only $100, you are paying $120. This purchase consideration is, why you are paying $20 extra, you are saying that the company is having goodwill. Goodwill is the excess of purchasing price over the fair value of identifiable net assets acquired in the business acquisition. Understand? This $20 is a goodwill. So goodwill not amortized but tested for impairment at least annually once. Okay, we will test. Now held to maturity securities are reported at amortized cost. So these are the securities held for maturity, trader securities. Okay, right sir, investment securities, these are the names for it. Held to maturity securities are reported at amortized cost. Okay, so whatever the amortized cost would be there, that amortized cost would be taken, because these securities are going to be mature, and till the maturity those are with us. So for example, you invested a particular item that is $100, and it would be with you till maturity value. So what is the maturity period? This maturity period is, for example, 2030. Now the year is 2020. During this 10 years, what is the value? Okay, you please amortize it. Now the interest rate is 5%. Take the interest factor as a discount factor. The value of this particular asset is $100 during 2030, and what is the value now, present value? Then take the value, because it is till held to maturity is available with us. And trade securities, trading securities means you can trade now itself, right? You can trade now itself. That is the reason sale securities or derivatives are reported at fair value. So fair value, what is the fair value will be identified in the market, then at that particular fair value you will show in your balance sheet as a trade securities, because these are trade and ready for available securities. Next, for trade securities and derivatives, unrealized gain would be there, no sir, unrealized, because you are not yet sold. Unrealized gain, or for example, those are trading at loss. You purchased at $100, for example, those are trading at 90, $10 is the loss. Okay, or for example, if they are trading at 110, 120, the $20 may be the profit. So this $20 profit or this $10 loss, okay, are recognized in the income statement. Got my point? This is directly going to be recognized in income statement, because the market rate is now trading at low. It may be go low also, but till now at the current period, what is happening? What is the market price? So 90. So loss is there. That loss is shown under income statement as loss. And unrealized gain or loss available for sale securities are reported under comprehensive income statement. Okay, these are the trading securities. Income statement it is going, and if it is a available for sale security, it is going for the comprehensive income. Okay, means reported to equity. It's a comprehensive income, means comprehensive income, you know, after income statement is a comprehensive income statement is coming. If it is available for sale securities or gain or loss, whatever it may be, that will go into the comprehensive income. If it is trading security, income or gain, that is going to the income statement. Okay, and if it is held to maturity, amortized cost should be taken as a value of the asset. And if it is a trading security or a sale security, available for sale security, the fair value will be going for the balance sheet as a value of asset. Hope you understand this.